Something happened last night that changed the energy surrounding your heart. You may not know what it was. You may not have seen it. You may not have heard the words that were spoken. You may have simply gone to sleep, closed your eyes, and allowed another day to disappear behind you. But somewhere in the quiet space between yesterday and today, something shifted. A thought became a realization, a feeling became a decision, a question became an answer, and someone who has been carrying emotions they could not fully explain suddenly found themselves looking at the possibility of a future with you in a completely different way. This is not about a passing attraction. This is not about someone being fascinated by you for a moment and then forgetting you when life becomes busy again. This is about intention. This is about the kind of feeling that makes a person stop and ask themselves a serious question. What if I actually built my future with this person? And that question can change everything, because there is a tremendous difference between someone who enjoys your presence and someone who can imagine their life becoming more meaningful because you are part of it. There is a difference between someone who wants your attention and someone who wants to earn your trust. There is a difference between someone who says they care and someone who begins thinking about what it would actually take to protect, respect, support, and build something lasting with you. Something about you has made someone think beyond the moment. And perhaps the most surprising part is that you may not have done anything dramatic to cause it. You did not have to chase. You did not have to convince. You did not have to prove that you were worthy. You simply continued becoming yourself. And sometimes, that is exactly what makes another person finally understand your value. You may have wondered why someone became quieter. You may have wondered why their behavior seemed different. You may have wondered why they appeared to be observing more than they were speaking. You may have wondered why certain conversations suddenly felt heavier, deeper, or more meaningful. Maybe there were moments when you thought, do they actually care, or am I imagining something? Maybe you questioned whether the connection meant as much to them as it meant to you. Maybe you became tired of trying to interpret silence. But what if the silence was not necessarily emptiness? What if someone was trying to understand their own heart? Because sometimes a person becomes quiet when their feelings become serious. A casual feeling does not always require reflection. A temporary attraction does not always force someone to reconsider their priorities, but when a person begins imagining a real future, everything becomes more complicated. Suddenly, they are not only thinking about emotion. They are thinking about responsibility, timing, family, stability, trust, commitment, the kind of person they need to become, and that is where this message becomes interesting. Someone may have reached a point where the idea of loving you is no longer enough. They want to know whether they can build with you. They want to know whether they can stand beside you when life is easy and when it is difficult. They want to know whether the connection can survive ordinary days, not just emotional moments, and perhaps something happened last night that pushed those thoughts to the surface. Maybe they had a conversation with someone they trust. Maybe they spent time alone thinking about their future. Maybe something reminded them of you. Maybe they saw another couple, heard a conversation about marriage, watched someone make a commitment, or simply experienced one of those quiet moments when the distractions disappear and the truth becomes impossible to ignore, and in that moment, your memory may have entered their mind differently, not as a fantasy, not merely as someone they miss, but as someone they could actually choose. That is a powerful distinction, because when someone begins thinking about choosing you, they are no longer simply wondering how you feel, they are examining what they feel, they are asking themselves whether they have been honest, whether they have been brave, whether they have allowed fear to control their actions, whether they have waited too long, whether they have underestimated what this connection could become. And the shocking truth may be that someone who once seemed uncertain is beginning to become certain about one thing. They do not want to lose the possibility of you. Maybe they have not said it yet. Maybe they are still gathering courage. Maybe they are still trying to figure out the right way to approach you, but the internal conversation has changed. Instead of asking, "Do I like this person?" they may now be asking, "Could this be the person I spend my life with?" That is a completely different question, and if you have been through disappointment before, you may have difficulty believing that someone could genuinely approach you with pure intentions. You may have seen people promise things they did not mean. You may have watched someone become affectionate only when it benefited them. You may have experienced confusion, mixed signals, inconsistency, or emotional distance. So when someone says they want something serious, part of you may naturally wonder whether it is real. That does not make you negative. It means you have learned that words alone are not enough. And perhaps that is exactly why this next chapter should not be measured by beautiful promises, it should be measured by consistent actions. If someone truly wants a future with you, they will eventually have to show you, they will have to communicate, they will have to respect your boundaries, they will have to be honest about their intentions. They will have to make room for you in their real life rather than keeping you inside a fantasy. They will have to demonstrate that their interest is not simply emotional excitement, and that is where pure intention becomes meaningful. Pure intention is not perfection. It does not mean the person will never be nervous. It does not mean they will know exactly what to say. It does not mean everything will happen overnight. It means their desire is moving towards something sincere, something responsible, something that respects both people. And perhaps someone has finally reached that point. There may have been a long period when this person did not know what they wanted. Maybe they were distracted. Maybe they were afraid. Maybe they were focused on other parts of life. Maybe they had unresolved issues. Maybe they simply did not understand the depth of their feelings. But something has changed. The future suddenly looks different when they picture it without you. And that realization can be uncomfortable, because it forces someone to admit that the person they thought they could easily move on from may actually be the person they cannot casually replace. You may have been wondering why certain connections never felt right. Why some people came into your life and disappeared. Why some conversations began with excitement but ended with confusion. Why some relationships seemed promising but could not survive the reality of everyday life. Perhaps those experiences taught you something important. They taught you not to confuse attention with commitment. They taught you not to confuse chemistry with compatibility. They taught you not to confuse longing with love. They taught you that someone can miss you and still not be ready for you, and now, perhaps, someone is approaching a different level of readiness. That is why this message is not simply about romance. It is about maturity. It is about someone realizing that love is not only about how intensely they feel. It is also about how responsibly they act. Imagine someone sitting quietly last night, replaying memories, not necessarily dramatic memories, maybe something incredibly small, a conversation, a laugh, a look, a moment when you showed kindness, a time when you were patient, a moment when you walked away instead of begging someone to stay. Sometimes the smallest memories become the strongest reminders. They show a person what they actually valued, and perhaps this person remembered something about you that they had taken for granted. Maybe they remembered how you made ordinary moments feel different. Maybe they remembered how comfortable silence felt around you. Maybe they remembered how you listened. Maybe they remembered something you said months ago that suddenly makes sense now, and suddenly, the person realizes that what they had been searching for in complicated places may have been present in something much simpler, a genuine connection, a peaceful presence, a person who did not need to perform to be valuable, a person whose presence felt honest. That kind of realization can arrive quietly. There may be no dramatic announcement, no movie-like scene, no perfect speech, just a private moment when someone finally admits to themselves, I could actually build a life with this person. And perhaps they are not only thinking about marriage as a ceremony, they are thinking about partnership. They are thinking about waking up beside someone and having ordinary conversations. They are thinking about making decisions together. They are thinking about supporting each other through difficult seasons. They are thinking about celebrating victories together. They are thinking about creating traditions. They are thinking about building a home filled with peace rather than constant uncertainty. And if someone is truly thinking this way about you, it means their perspective is becoming more grounded. They are not simply imagining the highlight reel, they are considering the real life, the grocery store conversations, the stressful days, the responsibilities, the compromises. The moments when one person needs extra patience, the moments when both people need to communicate instead of assuming. That is what makes a serious intention different. It is not simply saying, I want you. It is saying, I want to learn how to love you well. And perhaps someone has begun asking themselves exactly that. How do I love this person properly? How do I approach them without repeating old mistakes? How do I make them feel safe enough to believe me? How do I show them that I am not here for a temporary experience? How do I make my intentions clear? Those questions may be happening internally before they ever become words. And you should not feel pressured to manufacture an answer for them. You do not have to chase the outcome. You do not have to force a conversation. You do not have to turn every coincidence into a sign. You can simply remain grounded. Let actions reveal what words cannot, because the most beautiful part of a genuine connection is that you do not have to beg it into existence. You do not have to convince someone to value you. You do not have to compete with another person. You do not have to become someone else. If someone is truly ready to build something meaningful with you, they will eventually move toward clarity, and clarity is important, because love should not require you to spend every day wondering where you stand. There can be mystery at the beginning. There can be nervousness, there can be uncertainty about timing, but eventually, sincerity becomes visible, the person communicates, the person shows up, the person follows through, the person stops hiding behind vague statements, the person begins making choices that reflect what they say. That is the kind of energy worth recognizing. Perhaps the biggest surprise in this story is not that someone wants marriage. Perhaps the biggest surprise is why. They may have discovered that their feelings for you are connected to something deeper than attraction. They may admire your character. They may respect your independence. They may appreciate your resilience. They may feel that conversations with you have substance. They may feel that you challenge them to become better without demanding that they become someone completely different, and perhaps they have realized that peace is not boring. Sometimes people spend years believing that love must feel chaotic to be powerful. They confuse emotional turbulence with passion. They mistake uncertainty for excitement. Then one day they encounter someone who brings a different kind of feeling, a quieter feeling, a steadier feeling, a feeling that does not constantly demand proof, and suddenly, they understand, this is different. That difference can be frightening at first, because peaceful love requires vulnerability. There is nowhere to hide behind drama. If the connection is healthy, both people eventually have to be honest, and honesty can feel more frightening than uncertainty. Maybe that is why this person has taken time. Maybe they have been fighting an internal battle between what they feel and what they are ready to admit. But something may have happened last night that brought the truth closer to the surface. Perhaps they realized that waiting forever does not make fear disappear. Sometimes you have to make a decision while still feeling nervous, and maybe their decision is becoming clearer. They want to move toward you, not because they believe you will magically fix their life, not because they want someone to complete them, not because they are trying to escape loneliness, but because they genuinely believe the two of you could create something meaningful together. That is a much healthier foundation, and if this person eventually approaches you, listen carefully. Do not only listen to the beautiful words, listen for accountability, listen for clarity, listen for respect, listen for whether their vision includes your needs too. A real future is not one person announcing what they want while expecting the other person to simply follow. A real future is built together. Your voice matters. Your dreams matter. Your boundaries matter. Your comfort matters. Your timing matters. Your ability to say yes or no matters. So if someone truly has pure intentions, they will not pressure you. They will not demand immediate trust. They will not make you feel guilty for needing time. They will understand that trust is built. They will allow their behavior to speak, and perhaps that is the kind of person this message is inviting you to recognize. Someone who is not merely ready to say I love you, but ready to demonstrate what love means through everyday choices. Someone who understands that commitment is not a single dramatic moment, it is thousands of ordinary decisions, choosing honesty, choosing patience, choosing communication, choosing loyalty, choosing kindness, choosing growth, choosing to repair rather than abandon. Choosing to listen, choosing to show up, that is where a lasting relationship becomes real. And perhaps someone has been thinking about these things much more seriously than you realize. You may not see their private reflections. You may not know the conversations they have had. You may not know how many times your name has appeared in their thoughts. But you also do not need to know every private detail. What matters is what eventually becomes visible. Because a healthy relationship cannot remain hidden inside someone's imagination forever. At some point, intention must become action. That is when you will know, not because a mysterious message told you, not because every coincidence proves something, but because the person themselves makes their intentions clear. And when that moment arrives, you may understand why the journey took so long. Maybe you were both becoming different people. Maybe you needed experiences that taught you what you would and would not accept. Maybe they needed to grow into someone capable of offering the kind of commitment they now desire. Maybe you needed to learn that being loved should never require abandoning yourself, and perhaps that lesson is one of the most important parts of this entire message. Do not lose yourself waiting for someone to choose you. The right kind of love should add to your life, not erase you from it. You should still have your dreams, your friendships, your interests, your goals, your personal growth, your own identity. Someone who genuinely loves you will not need you to become smaller so they can feel bigger. They will not ask you to abandon your values to prove your devotion. They will not demand that you accept disrespect simply because they call it love. Pure intention has boundaries. It understands that love without respect is incomplete. And perhaps this person is learning exactly that. Maybe they once thought commitment meant simply having someone beside them. Now they may understand that commitment means caring about the quality of the life you build together. That is a major transformation. And perhaps you are also changing. Maybe you are no longer impressed by empty promises. Maybe you no longer want a connection that keeps you guessing. Maybe you are finally ready for something that feels peaceful and mutual. That growth matters, because sometimes the reason a relationship becomes possible later is that both people have become capable of handling it. You may have once accepted less because you hoped love would eventually transform it. Now you understand that hope is not a substitute for action. And that realization changes the kind of relationship you attract and accept. Perhaps someone notices that change in you. They may see that you are no longer desperately seeking validation. You have become more grounded. You are not begging anyone to recognize your value. You are living. You are growing. You are becoming more comfortable with yourself. And that can be deeply attractive to someone who is finally looking for something real, because genuine commitment is often drawn toward emotional maturity, a person who knows themselves, a person who can communicate, a person who can say what they need, a person who can give love without losing themselves. Maybe that is what someone sees in you now. And maybe it scares them a little, because when someone recognizes that you are valuable, they also realize that they cannot approach you carelessly. They know you deserve sincerity. They know half effort will not be enough. They know that if they come toward you, they need to come with something real. That realization could explain why they have been thinking so much. They are not necessarily trying to figure out whether they want you. They may be figuring out whether they are ready to become the person who can build with you. And there is something beautiful about that distinction, because it shifts the question from "do they love me?" to "are they capable of loving me in a healthy way?" That is the question worth asking, not whether someone feels strongly, not whether they miss you, not whether they are jealous, not whether they think about you at night. The deeper question is whether they can turn those feelings into responsible action, and perhaps the shocking truth is that someone is beginning to understand this. They may be realizing that marriage is not about possessing another person, it is about partnership. It is about choosing each other while still respecting each other's individuality. It is about building trust through repetition. It is about having difficult conversations without destroying one another. It is about making room for growth. It is about creating a relationship where both people can breathe. If someone approaches you with that mindset, pay attention. That is more meaningful than a grand declaration. Maybe last night they imagined what it would be like to introduce you as their future spouse. Maybe they imagined the reactions of people around them. Maybe they imagined